If you came to this video looking for another review of the film or another explanation of how woke culture is destroying humanity, or another debate about the actors, the politics, or who was paid to play whom, I can promise you one thing. You will be 100% disappointed. Here, we talk about the code and how Hebrew holds a theory of everything from the Bible to Lady Gaga, this time through the Odyssey, not as a film review, but as another layer revealing how place and time are encoded into reality. Whether you like it or not, we are all beginning to wake up. Start with the short video. It works like a filter. If you can follow it, or if you can already see what it means to be outside the code.
Point is, America's back, baby. No more woke. And that applies to movies, too, like Christopher Nolan's Pinko Commie Woke Fest, The Odyssey.
The most famous warrior in history, not just Greek history, all of history, Achilles, is about to be played by a transgender woman in a brand new movie. Elon Musk has been tweeting about this all week long. He just said Christopher Nolan is pissing on Homer's grave. It's disgraceful.
This is cultural vandalism, is what they're doing, historical vandalism.
What will speak most is the fact that nobody's going to go see this woke movie, and it's going to be a box office bust, and they're going to make zero money on it.
Yeah, how dare you cast popular actors in fictional roles in a movie adaptation of a poem written 2,700 years ago? And a black woman as Helen of Troy, who, according to the same mythology, hatched from an egg that was the result of Zeus turning into a swan and having sex with a goddess, who turned into a goose. You know, white lady stuff. Point is, America's back, baby. No more woke. And that applies.
If you can recognize that almost every discussion about this film happens outside the code, then keep watching. The moment I say that Hebrew is the theory of everything, many people stop listening, not because of the idea itself, but because the word Hebrew immediately becomes associated with Judaism, religion, or the modern state of Israel. This work is about none of those things. The Odyssey is one of the best examples of why I make that claim. For nearly 3,000 years, people have interpreted this story from the day it was written to its latest cinematic adaptation. Almost everything has already been said, yet there is one Hebrew word that explains the entire story. Without that word, everyone keeps walking in circles. The very same circles humanity has been walking since the first 5 books of the Torah until today. Let's begin with an important distinction. We are not reading the code through history. We are reading it through its appearance in reality. As I speak, words will appear on the screen. If you don't catch everything the first time, watch it again. It takes a moment to realize that everything I am saying is already encoded in the Hebrew words themselves. These are not my opinions, not my interpretations, not my theories. They are movements already encoded within the Hebrew language. You simply have to know how to take the words apart and put them back together, because the words themselves move. And all of reality is built on movement. Without vibration, without waves, without motion, there is no life. There is no reality. In this video, I am not trying to prove what is true. I am not defending an interpretation, and I am not forcing every observation back into historical research or conventional etymology. Instead, I am creating a space where we can follow recurring movements, images, and structures and simply observe where they lead. The code does not depend on historical claims or on what is considered factual. Every work of art, every story, every myth, it is another human attempt to translate the code. Including this new version of the Odyssey, the code itself is preserved in the first 5 books of the Torah. Everything that comes after is interpretation, including this film. Every character, every symbol, every sign, it can be understood through the movement of the Hebrew words, without exception, because they all describe movements of reality, more precisely, movements of reality unfolding here and now. The code is like the hands of a clock. At every moment, it reveals what is happening right now. That is why the letters must remain free to move. Without movement, we become trapped inside a single interpretation with no possibility of renewal. Even the Hebrew word for past carries that movement. Humanity keeps trying to move forward while holding tightly to the past, sanctifying it, romanticizing it, worshiping nostalgia. But according to the code, the past is meant to be burned. The code is not about a character, not about a plot. It is about movement. And movement is never simply forward. It is always forward and back again, not forward and backward. That is the secret of the Odyssey, and all of it is encoded in one Hebrew word, pig. There are several fundamental movements that repeat throughout the Odyssey: departure and return, forgetting and remembering, temptation and refusal, name and identity, home, not as a place, but as a state of consciousness, a journey in which every stop is not merely a geographical location, but another possibility for a human being to become trapped. Odysseus is not traveling from island to island. He is traveling between different versions of himself. On every island, he almost becomes someone else. Each place offers him another identity, another life, another reason to stop. The journey is not about reaching home. It is about refusing to become trapped by any one identity. That is how the code works. It does not ask, who is this character? It asks, what movement does this character represent? In other videos, I may return to the horse, the three-headed monster, the one-eyed giant, the queen who appears first as a white woman and later as a black woman, Odysseus, Penelope, the transcendent warrior, and even the connection between this story and the war unfolding today in the Middle East. The truth is, there are not enough hours in a day to unfold every appearance of the code in reality. So let us begin somewhere much simpler with the time we are living in now. Time 4, the time we came from, time 3, and the time toward which we are moving, time 5, all exist simultaneously, just like the numbers on a clock. Only the hands move. Right now, the hands point to time 4. Why humanity seems to remain there for so long is encoded in two Hebrew words, suitors and pig, and in the journey toward a sun that seems to be setting and rising at the same time. Because in Hebrew, even before the story, the movement already exists inside the word. The Hebrew word for suitor is mehazer, but hidden inside that word is the verb to return. A suitor does not try once, he returns again and again. He circles, he repeats, he cannot let go. So perhaps the suitors are not simply men trying to marry Penelope. Perhaps they are people who have lost the ability to continue the journey, people whose entire existence has become repetition around the same house, the same world, the same identity. Notice something remarkable. The suitors never return home. Instead, they occupy a home that is not theirs. Their return has been broken. Instead of completing the circle, they become trapped inside it. Odysseus also returns, but he returns home. That difference changes everything. It is the difference between a cycle that creates life and a loop from the outside, both look like repetition. Inside the code, they are opposites. One moves through repetition. The other is imprisoned by it. The Hebrew word mehazer no longer describes only someone pursuing love. It becomes a movement of desire endlessly revolving around itself, a spirit unable to leave matter. Then another question appears. What does the pig represent? Why is the pig forbidden? Perhaps not because it is an unclean animal in a religious sense, but because it represents complete immersion in matter, consumption, appetite, and immediate satisfaction. If so, the suitors are not merely courting Penelope. They are human beings trapped inside a desire that never reaches fulfillment. The story itself shows this. They eat. They drink, they consume Odysseus's house, and they endlessly postpone the moment of departure. They live inside continuous consumption, perhaps inside humanity's deepest fear, the fear of change, the fear of death. But one letter still remains unexplained. Why does the Hebrew word for suitor begin with the letter mem, while the word for pig does not? The letter mem represents water, the boundary, and the reflection between worlds, the upper waters, the lower waters. It holds the tension between the masculine movement and the feminine movement, heaven and earth. The Hebrew word for reality is itself a map. It reveals where we are. Our world is the middle world. From this idea emerged every image of heaven and the underworld. Sometimes reality seems to open toward higher worlds. Sometimes it becomes hell on earth because the middle is also the average. A world suspended inside lukewarm waters, filled with interpretations, interpreters, and endless attempts to explain reality. But let us return to the pigs. They represent a state of existence, a life that remains slightly above the water, yet still trapped in the mud. And once you are in the mud, it is very difficult to move again. Now let me show you how the code works at the level of the letters. Het represents life. Zayin is not only the number 7, it is movement itself. Interestingly, the Hebrew verb zaz, moves, doubles the letter zayin, as if movement reveals itself through the doubling of that force. Resh is the head, the place where reality becomes conscious of itself, the place where the invisible becomes tangible, visible, manifest. It is as if every thought creates one more pixel of reality. This movement is encoded in the Hebrew word for thoughts, and even in the name Yahweh. The human brain is a technology. It receives reality, processes it through thought, and broadcasts it through speech. Even the Hebrew word for brain points toward a future stage in humanity's journey, a time when the spirit will gradually free itself from matter. The word pig already conveys that movement. So does the color black. Its movement tells the story of the spirit's journey through matter, its eventual release. By contrast, the color white describes another force, a force expressed today through what we call the white man, his historical role, and the masculine movement within reality. That is why, when a familiar character suddenly changes, when a queen once portrayed by a white actress is now portrayed by a black actress, I do not begin by asking whether it is right or wrong. I ask, what movement does this reveal? In the code, these appearances are like the hands of a clock. They do not create time, they reveal it. They show us where we are on the timeline of human consciousness. The The deeper code of reality is not discovered through argument, but through silence, through observation, like looking at a clock without hands, until you begin to recognize time itself. For me, Hebrew is not the destination. It is a pair of training wheels, a way of learning to recognize movements that already exist within reality. Perhaps that is exactly what Time 4 is, the stage where we still need the training wheels before we learn to ride on our own. Hebrew is how we learned to see, but vision itself is still bound to matter. Perhaps that is why the deepest code of reality is not revealed through sight alone. The real code is revealed through silence, through observation, through the movement itself. As I mentioned before, the letter Het represents life itself, but in the code, certain letters move in pairs. Het and Kaf are one of those pairs. Kaf often represents reflection, imitation, or something that mirrors another thing. That is why the Hebrew word for pig can also open the movement encoded in the word male. The same movement appears again: memory, forgetting, and remembrance. Black and white are not merely colors. They are forces that shape reality. Black describes the spirit's journey before its release. The black letters of the Torah wait to be untied. The white parchment upon which they are written represents the world of matter, the world that carries those letters, reveals them, clarifies them until they return to light. It may sound poetic, but this is not poetry alone. These are descriptions of how physical reality is built. Personally, I look forward to the day scientists begin working with the code, because everything is already here, waiting to be discovered. Now we can return to the root: Het, Zayin, Resh. The movement is no longer simply to return. It is life, moving until it reaches the head, consciousness, where thought determines what will enter reality through speech. The Aramaic expression abracadabra describes exactly this movement. I create as I speak. Every thought must pass through a process. It can become clarity, or it can become another obsessive thought, repeating itself again and again, creating yet another looping reality. This is true for every individual, and it is equally true for humanity as a whole. Inside the Hebrew word for pig, the movement continues unfolding. You can already recognize spirit, stranger, sunrise. These are not random words. They are branches growing from the same structure. Spirit is the movement we cannot see, yet the force that moves everything. The stranger is whatever enters a system from outside, forcing it to change. Sunrise is the movement from the hidden into the visible. Every Hebrew word tells the story of a journey from darkness to light. It is the journey of remembrance, because in the Hebrew story of creation, darkness was never created. It was already there, before the first act of creation, before the first separation, before the first word, and perhaps every journey of return begins there. Like memory waiting to awaken. It is the reality that existed before creation, the beginning that almost everyone forgets to explore. So a way of describing how reality itself unfolds. So why did the Odyssey have to reappear in reality now, with all of its so-called woke signs? Because this is the story of the soul, and exactly where it stands on the axis of time. The soul is the stranger in this world, and it is also the mystery. It comes from before the division, before male and female, and when it enters the material world, sometimes it gets stuck, just like the suitors. It wants to conquer the house, this world, even though the house does not truly belong to it. It wants to return home, but the sea cannot really take it back. So it tries to return through time, perhaps by killing God, driving a spear into his eye, perhaps by killing the body, devouring the flesh. But every action creates another rope, another knot, another attachment to the very world it is trying to escape. And eventually, there are only two movements left. It learns to surrender, or it returns. Again and again and again, everything I have described is encoded in the words, the letters, and the numbers. This video has focused mainly on the letters that unfold into the Hebrew words for pig and suitor. And as those words continue to unfold across the screen, I hope you will watch this video again. This time, do not listen to me. Just watch the words. Find the connections yourself. Because this is the story the Odyssey has been trying to tell. And it is a story that can only be fully decoded through Hebrew. The code must be able to change, to update, to shapeshift. Otherwise, it could never remain faithful to its function, to hold the here and now, to reveal reality exactly where it is, even when that reality appears trapped in a loop. Because inside the loop, the movement forward is still there. The human story has an ending. Like all matter, it too will eventually break apart and return to its source. We can resist. We can hold on. We can postpone the end. We can keep returning again and again and again. But death is home. Life is only a temporary vacation. And that is the true meaning of the word Torah.